Hello, folks. So today, very excitedly, my guest is Jeroen Janssen, and he sits at a very interesting intersection of hospitality and technology and customer experience, things that I'm very interested in. So if you want to just tell us a little bit about what you do, Jeroen, and how you help companies, I'd be very interested to hear.
Sure, no problem. So, my name is Jeroen. I live in Amsterdam. I started my career in customer experience, working for second biggest supermarket in the Netherlands, Jumbo, responsible for customer experience, responsible aligning all the initiatives towards the customers into something that makes sense. After that, I worked for Unilever, where I was responsible for all the milk brands in Europe. Same story, but a little bit different because Unilever talks about consumers and not about customers. They tend to be the same, but that raises a completely different topic. And after that, I worked a couple of years for myself in my own CX agency, mostly focusing on guests. By accident, we got a couple of hotel chains as customers. So the customer became the guest. That company got acquired after 4 years. And after that, I got a lot of requests out of the real estate world where they tend to think more and more in customers, as users, residents. And that's just a very amazing destination for me where you can make the most impact. And that is now my full focus. Working in real estate. Well, we'll talk a bit more in a second. Focusing on that user just to make sure that the user is living his life in the device that he spends the most time in at home, in a world that it makes sense.
Okay. So I've already so many areas there. So, okay, I would like to get to the development phase. So your world became about the customer experience, however that manifested. At the moment,
Yes,
it's in where the person lives. So you're in real estate.
exactly.
So before I get to, I'd love to pick your brain on hotels and then real
Sure.
estate. So to give some people and myself a bit more of an overview, I picked two projects on your site,
Hmm.
the Neom project in Hudson Yards.
Yeah.
And so could you talk to us just what is your role in complex projects like that?
Yeah. So, when it comes to Neom, it's an interesting project, right? Before you even start talking about the project, there's already a branding project going on, right? Because if you talk about brands, and then we'll get to the project for a second, brand in real estate, a lot of people think, oh, brand in real estate, besides an identity or a nice logo on a co-working spot, didn't really work out, doesn't really happening. Yet there are two amazing brands, to name a few, that already have been created. And one of them is Dubai.
Yes.
Dubai is not a real estate, a city or whatsoever, a real estate destination. It is a brand. And if you think about Dubai, you think about exactly what you think about. There's a strong, strong brand related to
Yes.
Dubai. Same happened with Saudi Arabia. A lot of people talk about whether Neom is actually going to be built, yes or no. Would the line come, yes or no? An amazing achievement already happened is that if you think about Saudi Arabia, you think about Neom, you think about the line, you think about Trojena, you think about innovation rather than just oil. That's step one. So
Yes.
every real estate or hospitality project in itself, whether you want it or not, carries a brand. Branding is there. Whether you want it or not, it's there. It has an identity. Well, for Neom, it started with a big, big ambition, right? A big ambition to be this super fancy, super guest focused destination. And then there are multiple different journeys. So the customer is not just a customer in the store. The customer is a resident. The customer is a traveler. The customer is a business. Well, first you need to structure that into what do you want to achieve per group,
Hmm.
right? And that was for Neom the main topic because you're talking about a research part and they will start building 4 years or 3, 4, 5 years later, right? That's what I love about hospitality and real estate. There's plenty of time, but it also carries around risks that all these different parties actually start building towards the research you actually did. So that's important, right? So for Neom, it was mainly aligning all those different companies that are involved in building a project towards, well, residential success, so to say.
It's You encapsulated the world of branding very well there. It's something I still struggle with. Some owners get it, some don't. When you're speaking with a hotel, which sometimes I do see things through the prism of branding, and of course I do as a kind of brand strategist, and that's my angle. But if you get the messaging right, it's, that foundational understanding of if it's positioned well, it's so much of the battle is already done. And then everything sits on top of that. And you can build an
Completely.
entire hotel, the customer experience. And I'm amazed still that that word that's around everywhere and everyone almost feels like it's done to death. But I still feel like most people don't get it. Like Neom is a perfect example of that, because really at the moment, all it is a brand. It's just an idea. And
Yes.
so many people know of it. They understand it. Your two examples of Dubai and Saudi Arabia are perfect. I mean, you say Dubai 20 years ago, the average person on the street, what did they think of? But very much today, they have changed and crafted a new story of what that means. And
No, and
we
people
all,
identify themselves with that like it's a fashion brand, right?
yes,
And the only thing you can, the only problem that happens when you talk about brand real estate, brand hospitality, is that every marketing department will look at it from the brand perspective directly to the customer, guest, or consumer perspective. But of course, that's not happening, right? If you travel, even before you go to the hotel website, you will visit booking.com, right?
yes.
And before you even entered the country, you already entered the airport, the origin airport where you need to fly on. And I think that was what was exclusively well done by Neom, that they took that whole ecosystem into account and they cut
Yeah.
it through all the crap and all the different journeys and made it relevant for that particular resident. So you need to look across multiple different ecosystems to be relevant for that guest, right?
So is that where you come from, Jeroen? You're there to try and make sure the guest experience in whatever project you're in stays at the forefront, that you're
Yes.
considering how it affects the guest customer in every way. Is that your kind of role?
Yeah. So I'm involved now in a couple of projects. We're developing actually our own apartments as well, because that is really where you go from taking it from slides to actual reality, and that's what you need, right? Otherwise, you or you keep on hallucinating about what could it be. That's where we're really excited for. But that's it. That's it, right? We start with the user and build it backwards rather than the other way around. And you're pretty much blinded by so many different processes that you would like to achieve that you'll never be able to do that the other way around. So in every project we were doing, whether it's building homes, or we're now currently involved into a super big hotel projects in the Caribbean. We really start the same. It's always with the user, and then look at the ecosystem around it, and then see where are the commonalities, where can we make impact, and where can we do things a little bit better.
Okay, well, let's go into so real estate wise, just expound on what you're doing there. So you're building real estate projects. Are these large apartment complexes?
Yes.
And you're trying to create, real estate is apartments, buildings, apartment one, apartment two. You're building a kind of living experience that it's so much more, all encompassing living experience, customer experience for the people who live there. Is that kind of what we're getting at?
Yeah. So the problem is, home is not the best place today in Europe, right? Without being too dramatic. But if you look at the numbers, more than 52% of all the people above 65, they're lonely, right? And you see also uh, horrible numbers when you look at younger people, from 25 to 35, more than 30% is multiple days in a month faces a lot of anxiety. The problem in real estate is that nobody cares about the user. So the moment the key is handed over to the resident, everyone is basically gone. And the only person that will show up is if you call it 3 times, which is an asset manager if your boiler's broken. Nobody's out there. So the question is, where's the responsibility for the customer in real estate? And then everybody looks to each other, right? Everybody's like, isn't that the case for the municipality? And that is what we see a lot. If you buy a pair of shoes or sneakers or a nice jacket, you get an SMS, text message, or an email with the question, how do we do? Right? But if you spend 30 or 40% of your monthly salary on rent, nobody gives nothing. You don't exist. You don't exist, right? So there are multiple opportunities. So with that in mind, we said, okay, if we really want to make a difference, we should actually develop our own apartment. So I was lucky enough to join an expert group with real estate development capacity, venture funding, real estate funding capacity. That started about 1.5 years ago. And we developed basically a vision on how modern apartments would look like for social housing, a free rent. I'm not sure how you call it in Dublin, but yeah, free rent and middle rent.
There's no free rent, and we
Well,
don't have
sorry.
that one.
So you get my point. Like,
Yes. Yeah.
there's no such thing as they call free rent.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. We're going to build 332 apartments in Almere, which is close to Amsterdam.
Wow.
They will have social spaces. We built, we go beyond concept. We actually build an infrastructure. So this is basically, this encounters a digital infrastructure with social elements, with an app, functions like, we ask once in a while how you're doing. And that is by itself for consumer brands, not old
Wow.
school, but in real estate, if you can actually talk about how happy your resident's going to be in the apartment block is amazing, right? And that's a starting point.
So, what is this your first project in this realm where you yourself are building the apartments? This is the first big one.
Yeah, this is the first big one. And of course, the last few years, we did a lot of consulting projects around hospitality, around real estate, but this is really the first one where we actually involved in as the initiator, but also the project developer. Yeah.
And are you involved as a kind of founding member of, guys,
Yes.
I want to bring these 300 plus apartments to life? And then you got,
Yes.
wow,
Yeah.
okay.
So we are with four partners, co-founded LivenWorld. LivenWorld stands for life, living in the world. And we're actually developing that. Yeah.
Okay, so what would be the timeline? Is there a brand around this? So very much to your first point, do the 300 apartments have a kind of a name, a brand that you'll be living in this area?
There's a name, but it's going to be rent.
Yeah.
And we do a middle rent, social rent, which is already quite special in that sense, because normally they do one of them, because those groups normally won't work together. But because we have the infrastructure, community infrastructure, care infrastructure, and digital infrastructure, we actually can, steer that into success and happiness. And the brand where we operate under is LivenWorld. We're not quite sure whether the apartment's actually going to be named, because that should serve a purpose and not our own, let's say, happiness to put a
Sure.
name on a brand, right? Yeah.
Is this a first of its kind? Are there many estate projects like this in Europe where there is a protective element? The app, we're checking in on you, that there's a kind of an ecosystem to it. Is this
Well,
a first?
I think in general there are multiple initiatives where there is a bit more of a user-centric approach to residents, right? You see a lot of hype, but it's not all scalable. And that is basically our goal with Live and World, where we're not just happy with the 300 apartments. We're only happy if we really scale this to thousands of apartments in, at least to start with, the Netherlands. We're now also talking to other countries where we actually land the infrastructure of Live and World, and we can work locally with architects, developers, and entrepreneurs to actually bring that to life. So it's about scalability. So I give a lot of talks about, how to put the user in the center of it. And then there are always people like, yeah, we have something happening in the south, and that's amazing because there's an apartment with older people and students, and that's perfect. I love that. But this is all about how can we scale it, right? We talk about
Mm.
millions and millions of people in homes that don't have the best time. Their generation alpha is coming. My son is 12. He's from 2013. They're entering the living space in about 8-9 years, and they are from a completely different generation. They're not going to call 3-4 people to fix their boilers. They have a completely different mindset, and they're coming, right? So we need to be ready for all those different generations and problems and challenges that we have.
Wow, that's a very scary thought. Yes, I've never even thought of that, because obviously we've been saying Gen Z or the people under my generation, but of course, yeah, so it doesn't slow down. There's generations coming behind them, and yeah, we've really, dare I say, messed things up. I don't want to say all of Europe. I guess I'll speak for my own country, but yes, the housing crisis and how generations are coming through. There's just no houses. We haven't built enough. Where Ireland is behind hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of houses. I believe the UK is the same, but I believe it's across Europe. So
It's the
yes, it
same.
is a
It's the same.
serious issue.
It's the same, but there's a lot of different trends that you could follow in the bigger cities in Europe. The biggest thing I always hear is like, yeah, but we need to build houses as soon as possible, so people should be happy. that they even have a house, right? So why would we bother even make those lives easier? It's like, well, if that's the goal, right? Let's run that. Let's do that. But I don't think that that is the key. And being in this category, it's not just about our own apartments and our own project. It's really also about how could we work together with everyone involved to make that a little bit better for people in apartments.
Indeed, I'll move on. I'd love to keep chatting to you on this particular topic. As you said a moment ago, just it is the largest purchase of your life. Even the car falls into that category. You've never bought anything at that stage of money, and then at some point in your life you hand over 10, 20 grand, or a house of hundreds and hundreds of thousands. And it's from the selling perspective of it, it's so nothing. It's like a few emails, you meet someone, and all of a sudden you've a house. And it's the day I bought my house, I got an email saying it's in the key box. So, I mean, the key was in the key box.
Exactly. There's a
Any
whole there's
and
there's a whole journey coming up. Even you're mentioning spot on. Even before you even enter the house, whether you're
Yeah.
buying or renting, there's a whole transformational journey on top of it. And it's not just we're not just creating hallmark moments here. It's also smart. If you're a real estate developer and you don't even understand who your residents are, then there is no life cycle for you to even sell to students a one apartment building or a family home, right? So it's not just relevant. It's a business model. And look at the hotels, right? Because we're blending a bit the hotels and the real estate. A big problem for hotels these days is that the data of the building is in the hands of CBR or GLL, which is the asset manager, and the data of the customers is in the hands of Booking.com. But hey, you are the hotel spending all the money on rent. So you need to start a loyalty program to actually understand who your customer is, right? If that's the key, and you're a real estate developer having dozens and hundreds of apartments, what could you learn from that? And I always refer to, if people say like, yeah, you know what, the housing crisis, to come back to my point earlier, I always refer to retail and office space. Retail is changed dramatically, right? Nobody could ever thought that 40-50% of the retail stores were out of business. Nobody would even thought that 30-40% of all the office spaces would be empty because of COVID. So behavior is important. And again, this is not to get people back to work in office spaces. This is just to take a little bit more responsibility to make life a bit better for people in homes, right?
Okay, well, so you've given me a slight segue there. So to get into hotels, you've worked with hotels in the past. I myself, I'm a sort of fan of that world, and I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I see them very differently from a customer experience level, from the first touch point, for them arriving, from them checking in, staying in the hotel, encouraging the user to use the hotel in terms of facilities and food and dining, how the hotel can be linked into surroundings where you're sort of selling the location. I believe hotels just don't position themselves and market themselves as well as they should or could. And as you said, a lot of that data is there, but it's so hard for the hotel to almost manage it that they outsource it. Booking.com does it, OTAs, third parties, because the system is complex and very expensive. But of course, the hotels it costs a lot for hotel to relinquish that data and that management. So there's definitely a missing piece there. And then over the last few years, you can see hotels almost combating that by streamlining themselves. So they become these very sparse hotels where they're just beds, everything is clean and everything works very well. But the old school style of hotel where there's the customer service and the barista, the cocktails, they're sort of almost either going away or becoming so expensive that it's hard to manage. So I just think there's a gap in that world. So how do you see it in your world of customer experience? The hotels that you worked with, what were elements that you were able to improve, or how did you look at it? And what were issues that they maybe lacked, or challenges they kind of struggled with?
Yeah, so I think the main important thing, one of the main important things is if you create a hotel concept, a lot of times you want to push it into a building, right? While pushing the concept into a building, you always make certain decisions. And in the end, there's nothing really left from that amazing concept of all these amazing experiences because of XYZ. And then it's just a normal, ordinary hotels. How many normal, ordinary hotels you have out there today, right? With the very normal lobby, with a very old school kind of community space. Look at what's happening with all the, you see that happening on Instagram as well, with all the sauna, wellness kind of community things, the belonging that new generations actually would like to feel. And we're not talking about new generations, we're talking about 20 to 35, 20 to 40, which is important. They don't want to be sitting on this boring hotel room and this smelly lobby. And which hotel brands are actually looking for those kind of things? And I think that's important. You really should see it as an infrastructure. Lots of time, the hotel brands are just being forced by commercial departments to run as much as bookings as possible, but nobody is looking after how could we make the stay a little bit more little nicer.
But to
I think
push
that's
you
a
on
big
that, Joe,
problem.
can I almost so
Please do.
is that the issue where it's, I mean, if there was a builder beside us, a contractor for large hotels, would they almost be rolling their eyes at us two designers saying, you just said it, I can't build a perfect hotel anymore in Europe. It's too expensive. These styles of spaces where they're open, they're grand, they've glass, there's a different style of architecture that looks good on a concept wall, but to actually build it is almost not possible anymore under just the price and cost of. So are we saying something that Dubai can do it because they can throw $1 billion at it? But if a rich man tomorrow in Europe was like, I'm going to build a hotel, he can't translate a concept hotel into reality as it would be too
Well,
expensive. Is there some
it's
truth
very
to that?
simple. It's very simple. Are in general worldwide, all the architects educational programs, whether it's universities or any other stuff, are for 70-80% technical. So you can't ask an architect to think about the experience. There's nobody in the majority of the hotel projects, nobody from the start responsible for the experience.
So
So
that's,
then,
yeah.
so that's the problem. And then afterwards, when the experience lags because of reviews of an external platform, they're going to hire somebody to do a customer journey research. If you think that the guest experience is the most important part, then that's the starting point to actually design it. And I think that's the key.
Yes.
And that's a lot difference that Dubai and Saudi Arabia is taking into account.
Okay, so there is a way to correct it, because if you were starting any project, because in real estate it does happen, for some reason, large real estate projects seem to understand that we need to sell these houses. So we need to create the vision and the concept of what we're selling first. And usually they've almost got buy-in from the brand that they've developed before they even build. And yes, perhaps in hotels, they do often go back to front. They start building the hotel, building the rooms, the leisure center, the infrastructure. There's so much work and millions going in. And yet, what are we calling it? What's the brand? What kind of stuff? Oh, well, we'll get to that at the end when the hotel is built. So, okay, very true. So probably we could build a perfect hotel if the customer experience was at the table at the very start. And
I
that
think
would affect.
it's that simple. It's really that simple. We're building homes at LivenWorld where we ask before we even talk to anybody involved, how would we make people feel in that place? And that's the starting point. And we need partners that actually wanna work with us on that. And it's the same with a hotel. What would be your favorite hotel brand coming up? Or what would be, if I would ask you, Paul, a hotel brand that actually cares about their guests? First thing pops up your mind.
I mean, I wouldn't have been in too many high-end hotels. I have been in the Voco chain in the last few years, and they seem quite consistent. Now, they're like a mid-tier chain hotel, but I've been in a few around in different cities in Europe. And they seem to take the vibe of the hotel quite seriously. So I sort of see the same elements of the hotel
Yeah.
well designed, and it seems like they know their customer segment quite well. But I don't think I've been in enough high-end places to.
No, but I think the starting, it's very simple. If you make the experience, if the experience is so important for you and you want to make that a differentiating factor in the hotel brand, let's start with that. And I think that we saw multiple examples of other brands in other sectors that actually follow that and were successful in it.
So the hotels that you worked with, where did they land? Did they bring you in at the start? Were they different hotels that at the end when they were developed, or can you expound on that world that you were involved in?
Yeah, so I think the majority of the hotel brands were involved after there were magnificent complaints about guests' experiences. The only real concepts that we were starting orchestrating the experience before building the whole brands were mainly in the Middle East,
Okay. Okay.
where you funny enough see that the service level, even in apartments, service apartments, are already higher. And it's easy to talk about that kind of experiences when it comes to a higher segment. I think the challenge is actually to do it in a three-star hotel, right? If you have the
Exactly.
same, it's not hard to create marvelous experiences if people spending 900 euros a month, 900 euros a day on a room, right?
Hmm.
There's pretty much margin left to actually do crazy stuff. But it gets very interesting. For example, if you look at the social hub, if you can create vibe in a hotel and combine your spaces with co-working, local
Hmm.
people, guests, students, Paul and his partner for a weekend,
Hmm.
then you actually start understanding what hospitality is about, and then you actually start creating something very, very interesting. But again, I have to be super critical about it.
Hmm.
We haven't seen so many great examples,
No.
and that still surprises me. I mean, you can name Soho House, which is having a hard time connecting with new generations. You can talk about W Hotel, could be seen as a great hospital. Is also struggling, going from party hotel to luxury hotel. So it's interesting.
Mm. And you could almost say, we're seeing it across the board. And I mean that societally, like customer service, the restaurant, the pub. I mean, working with just bars and restaurants and mid-tier businesses in Ireland. And when I was coming up, I mean, to have that level of service, staff, good barmen, good waiters, good people in your business, they all said it was impossible. They all said that was the main challenge they faced in terms of delivering the service they wanted to deliver. Something slightly broke there over the decades, where I think, if we go back in time, we have this perception that service was of a higher level in general. So I don't know what to make of that.
What I like about your country is that I was in Dublin a few weeks ago. What I like about it, the hospitality is really in the nature of your culture. At least it feels like it, and everybody writes about it, right? And that is already a great start. So that means that people actually appreciate it in the Netherlands. People don't talk to their neighbors. We're ice cold too against each other. Doesn't help. So
Right.
and so that's reality. I mean we do, and these days, of course, also newer generations, they don't connect that easily. So, and it's almost more awkward to walk outside the door and introduce yourself to a new neighbor. What a
Hmm.
freak, right? Almost like
Yeah.
that's weird. I think that's, and if that's a cultural reality, it's even harder. But I think you
Mhm.
guys have it. I mean, so it's right. I mean,
I do think I think I can say that, we do have it naturally, which is why I think we're very harsh when we see poor service in our own country. It drives us insane because it doesn't suit us, to walk into a pub 20 years ago. I feel like I could just eye the barman and have my order ready. There was just a much easier connection in the pubs. Now, if I go into Dublin, for me, I feel like there's a few key pubs, the old traditional pubs that I would go to that still have it. The barman's going to clock you when you come in the door, but most of them don't have it anymore. And you're waiting at the bar like a tourist going, oh my God, this didn't used to be like this. So, and then I think you can bring that across everything, that just that
yes.
service, that personal touch, is something is missing. And yes, so that's why I
Well,
feel,
and
as you said, you have to
that's for
design
our
it
age.
in.
Yeah, exactly. Design in, and that's for our age category, Paul. Assuming that we're a bit of the same age.
Yes.
But if you're 18 today, you spent from your 11th and 13th birthday at home behind your laptop because of COVID. And now you're 18, you're able to drink, and you're allowed to go to a bar. Good luck with that. That's not easy. They can't refer to a place where we coming from as a kid, pre MSN, go outside, you know, ring
Yeah.
outside to ask if Patricia or Patrick will play outside. They are from a completely different angle. And I don't want to sound like a grandpa who's talking about the little boys or girls, but it is true. So How about that? And
It is. And studies have shown that, and we don't, absolutely. So what would be something that hotels get wrong from a basic customer service? If you were running a hotel, where would you start? Is there some tips and tricks? If there was a hotel manager listening to this, what would be start here, just fix these basic few elements of a hotel? What's something from a customer experience standpoint that you could offer?
well, I think starts with the brand, right? Who do you want to be? You can't be everything for everyone, so you need to start. And based on who you want to be, you need to choose where in that journey you want to excel. If you want to excel in the rooms, you want to excel in the check-in. You can't do everything, so I think you need to choose. And if you choose based on the brand, if your brand is a very welcoming, warm brand, and you choose the check-in as your moment to shine, then that is your moment to actually shine. And then you could choose to say, I'm choosing basic room expectations. But if people actually leave the hotel, I'll make sure there's a very nice, warm community where people actually could refer to. Well, then you have two moments, the check in and the after, that you could embrace your branding and embrace your brand visions and whatever. And then that's enough, right? That's already enough. You don't have to do everything perfect. And if you could make that part of the process, make that part of the infrastructure. So that's
Mhm.
not a training. That's not a one-off training. Everything goes well for a weekend. No, this is really part of the hotel's infrastructure. So just as important as you hunt for locations in different cities, this is the infrastructure you need to build. So you need to build the mechanics to actually have a perfect check-in.
Mhm.
Doesn't just mean the app, also means that you have to redesign together with your architect, that you need, a lobby space that actually
Mhm.
requires that. And that's where you really take the experience as a starting point, the brand as a being point, and you design that through that journey.
I love that, John. That's such a great tip. And it's one I'm going to definitely steal, because I very much speak to my clients in terms of ecosystems and touch points. And yet I've never thought, yes, but let's focus on one and own it. Let's pick one and master one. And of course, the check-in is a perfect example. You can stay in very nice hotels where you've come from the airport, there was a delay, you arrive, you feel like you're at the hotel, and then you go through a very arduous or stressful few minutes, which is totally unnecessary, where I've just walked in the door. I know what I'm paying for this place. And sometimes the nicest of hotels can let you down. And on the flip side of that, I've told this story many times before, where me and a friend, when we were younger, we stayed in one of the oldest hotels, if not, I think it's the oldest hotel in the world. It's a hotel up in the hills in Japan. And we did it for that reason. Now, we didn't have the money to stay there, and we actually got in touch with them as kind of digital nomad writers. And they gave us a kind of room that wasn't open to the public, and we managed to stay there. But when we arrived, they didn't know we were kind of freeloading writers at the time, and we were just two guests. And my God, now obviously this hotel's very old, and there's pictures on the wall of kings and queens and people in the past. But when you arrive in, someone just meets you at the door and takes your bags, and then sits you down at these kind of tables and goes, "What would you like to drink?" I remember my friend Tim. I mean, oh, we haven't seen a menu, or we're not sure. What would you like? Anything at all? Oh, do we get two beers? Two beers, sir, certainly. And then they just went off. I was like, what? And they came over with two beers, a beer. I mean, doesn't cost a lot. And it was the nicest beer of our lives. And then the check-in was, we sit here. And the lady came down with a clipboard of, just give me your name, your information. And we filled it out together while I was having my beer. And then thank you, there's your key. We'll show you where to go. It's like, oh, where's our bags gone? And of course, the bags are already in the rooms. And we had another beer before, like, where's our bags? Oh, the bags are in the room, sir. Oh, thank you very much. Would you like another beer? Absolutely. And we had to, but like two beers, which they cost very little. And I loved the touch of what would you like? Because
It's
1 in 20, I mean, how many people are going to order an awkward? I'd say most people will just say a generic drink. Could I get a whiskey? Could I get a wine? Could I get a
well,
cocktail? And I
I
thought that's an amazing touch.
It is an amazing, but it's all about making these amazing touches, not a one-off, but actually part of a process. One example, I was in Istanbul with my son. We went to the spa, or no, I went to the gym in that hotel, and I took a towel, right? And then I wanted to go back to the room, and then the guy was running, staff member was running after me, like, "Hey, sir, can I have your towel, please?" I'm like, sure, why not? Sorry, I took a towel from your fitness. So somebody made a decision in that hotel some shift manager or a guys, we need to make sure that the towels in the fitness need to stay in the fitness and the people can take the towel. It's a super simple, but that little decision gives a thousand of horrible moments in terms of guest experience a day.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody needs to recognize it, or somebody should even start that. If you define that before, and multiple other good example before before the hotel even opens, it's not that hard, but you need to make it part of the process. And in the end, it's the person who creates or who deletes the most friction is just,
Mm-hmm.
and it's no rocket science. You don't need AI for that. And I think that's where we go horribly wrong. We tend to spend more time and money on ways how AI could optimize our guest journey than optimize those stupid little processes that are already out there for the current guests. Because it's easier to our, it's much nicer to our bosses to say, hey, we have this amazing new AI tool that could increase potentially to XYZ. Nobody wants to go to his boss and say, you know what? We have the best FAQ of our whole sector. And then it doesn't sound sexy, but it does help a lot in everyday customer experiences.
So I guess the hard part, I'm kind of almost trying to bring a question together here in my mind, and I'm not sure how to phrase it, where I guess the hard part is the process, because obviously one way you don't have to have a process is that the person you've hired is very nice. And so 2 quick examples that I can give to that is, I'm staying in a hotel in Achill Island. It's an island off the west coast of Ireland. So everything becomes lower, not lower standards, but these are not fancy hotels. It's a normal hotel, and I'm checking in. And the lady there obviously runs the hotel. And I'm checking in. She's like, oh, geez, your room isn't fucking ready yet. John is useless. Go on into the bar there and have a pint, and I'll get it ready for you. I thought that was brilliant. It didn't bother me in the slightest, all part of being on an island in the west of Ireland. So even the mistake of it, I thought was brilliant. And me and my mate were like, that's brilliant. Go on in there to the pub. And she's shouting at someone to get in there to the pub. And then we had, what would you like, lads? 2 pints of Guinness coming up. And the barman then even encouraged us, do you want another one, lads, before you go? Sure, we will. And it's so the Irish experience of it is, I'm loving it. Now, this hotel was very basic. Our room was very basic, but we went into town with a skip in our steps being like, that was hilarious. I stayed in a small little B&B there maybe last year. And of course, the lady came down going, how are you getting into town? And it's like, oh, we're just walking in. Oh, don't be daft. I'll drop you in. And so again, lady of the house is, I'll drive you in personally. It's like, oh my God, that's no. Now, of course, so that is just good people, good barmen, and you can't train for that. I guess you could have a good hiring experience, but very tricky. So then you have, as you said, the towel example where like someone's developed a process. So do you focus on the process or do you focus on the hiring of people? So I guess I'm just trying to consider that customer experience. Yes, there has to be processes in place that you can train your own staff to allow them to be nice to guests or allow them to take the initiative. And I guess you have to go through everything, but can you see what I'm trying to get at? Is it tricky
Totally.
Yeah.
No, it's very fairly simple. I mean, if you have a proper brand that stands for its values, you will attract already in the onboarding or even recruiting phase of people certain amount of people. If you have a colorless brand that doesn't appeal, then you will attract those people because they don't care about the brand; they just won't work. If you want to then train them to be marvelous on customer experience, it's not going to work. Then just in that case, don't change. Just stay colorless and be the cheapest, right? And don't give any expectations on guests. If you really care about the guest experience, then it starts with brand. And again, not everyone has to do it, but if you want to do it, it starts with the brand. You appeal because we only want people. We are looking for an office worker or a receptionist that actually cares about guests. Oh, wow, that's me. Well, that's where it starts. And then you need to make sure you choose 1 or 2 or 3 elements that you actually excel. And then it shouldn't be that hard to operate under circumstances that fit the brand and fit margins, etc., etc.
Fantastic. Yes. Very good answer. The brand, the culture.
It all comes back to also here, what I already said, also in housing. It's not about hallucinating around what is it great or not. It's all about how can you bring it back to an infrastructure, how you can indeed, to your point, bring it back to a process and make that work. If we're able to organize return processes for fashion on a global scale. Why couldn't we improve the booking experience on a global scale, right? It's all about focus. And I think in the end, if you don't, the same thing will happen with a lot of different brands, that you completely lose touch with your audience. And I think that's happening a lot with hotel brands these days. Didn't see it coming that a new generation is coming. That's just being comfortable, right? But there are only opportunities. And I think really my focus is now really on real estate, taking the hospitality mind into real estate, not trying to be the best or trying to be the coolest or trying to be the smartest, but slowly but surely inspiring also ecosystem partners to make sure that in 5 to 10 years from now, we have it in our legal systems that all real estate developers in a country or in Europe, besides being sustainable, besides being perfect with electricity, also have a legally obliged responsibility to look after mental health in their apartment building. I think if you can make that part of the legal systems, not just for us, but also for everyone, and you could actually be a proud real estate developer and say, in my buildings, people are happier, then you make an impact. And funny enough, if you talk about CSR, corporate social responsibility, or ESG, they carry two S's, which both stands for social. Yet we feel more comfortable putting solar panels on a roof than actually do something, find a mechanism, find a process to make people's lives a bit better. And I think that's a great challenge. So,
I love it, Jeroen. I couldn't agree more. So a quick kind of segue into AI. So just you briefly touched on it there. Where do you see AI playing a role? Does it come into your world? Do you bring it into the customers you work with in any way? Or are you experience first? How do you see it impacting
well, I
anything?
think, yeah, I mean, with making it very simple, I'm not the smartest one in the room, so I like to make things simple. AI is a perfect tool and a perfect way of thinking to reduce friction in your processes, right? And people do it already, so why wouldn't you do it? But the problem is, if you don't make technology part of your infrastructure and you're connected to old booking systems or old legacy systems, then you're lacking towards your guests who's using AI. So I think to reduce friction in the most simple form, it's a perfect tool and it's amazing. And of course, if you're a hotel or a real estate company and you're looking after building an infrastructure, technology infrastructure for your residents, it's perfect and it's essential. It's crucial to be ready for the future.
Yes, it's more future proofing now at this stage. But I think, again, and you phrased that very well, where it removes friction within processes. I think if people look at it like that, I'm not liking on my LinkedIn constantly, there's 100% or autopilot that this language of the AI will do it for you. Even that phrase to me, that still isn't correct. And that doesn't even really make sense. There has to be some human management over the very powerful AI tool, but it is just a tool and it has to connect a person to a person faster or easier, more efficiently. That makes sense to me.
Well, I think if you talk about AI, you mentioned LinkedIn. I use AI as well, also for my content creation, but it carries a large responsibility to make the content perfect. If your content is shit using AI, you're losing out. That's one thing. Second thing is, even with AI and the urge for authenticity becomes bigger by the minute. So even because of AI, you need to make the humanity and those kind of things part of the process as well.
So last slight question, I suppose, Jeroen, I'll just bring up the post that you put up. I'll just quickly read it out and then we can just have a kind of brief overview where you had said that the pub as we know it is over, not because people stopped needing social spaces, but because the model stopped matching how people live. The original public house was never meant to revolve around alcohol. It was simply a house where people gathered. Somewhere along the line, alcohol became the business model, and that model is breaking. In the UK, 400 pubs close every year. Across Europe, thousands of traditional pubs have disappeared. And at the same time, Gen Z is drinking a little less. 1 in 5 adults feel lonely, as you mentioned, and remote work that happened through COVID, one of the biggest changes we've ever seen. So you got a lot of comments. It was an interesting post. Again, it triggered me in my Irishness, of course, where I probably sit perfectly in that I'm 41 and yes, the pub, I'm seeing it. I mean, there really is this shift happening. And to go back to Dublin, as you said, still one of the best cities in Europe for a pint. And I don't think I say that biasly. I've drank in many of the cities in Europe. They beat us in a million different ways. That Irish stereotype of fun and music and crack and story is real. and the Irish pub in Dublin in certain cities manifested very well. So to lose the Irish pub is not just to lose a building of a pub, it's to lose something far, far greater and a link to something that's very kind of special in Irish culture. And we're losing them. And then they're being replaced by like better bars that are completely almost the antithesis of everything we've said. Just they work better, but they're terrible because they're not at all what has been replaced with, the personal touch, the vibe, the atmosphere, all the things that's really hard to put your finger on. It is now, and a more efficient machine of serving alcohol. And you're like, this is terrible. I hate this thing. And so is there anything we can do? I mean, pubs are closing. And of course, in this conversation, the pub is almost an example of what everything we're talking about. Like we're losing something at the heart of towns and villages around the world. Cafes, restaurants, food and beer, food and alcohol that bring people together are now businesses, and they're so hard to run and to manage. There's no money in them. Is there anything we can do? How do we combat this shift that's happening around us as we speak?
Yeah, well, I think it was so nice.
To ask a simple question.
No, but I mean, I probably will never give you the answer, but let me just, so we create we work for hospitality companies, we do a lot from real estate, as we said, and we think about concepts, right? And one thing that came out was the pub. And I would never expect so many comments and like fairly, even for English people or for Irish people, I know it's not the same, but fairly direct, like it was almost dust. Like, of course you get them in the heart, right? And I don't do that to provoke. At the same time, we do, because we want, you could mention 5, 6, 7, 8 reasons why pubs are closing. There's one truth, and that's that our younger generations don't drink that much. You'll see that in all the numbers, all alcohol brands are struggling, right? So it will be a matter of time that also will be seen in visits of the pub. Well, then there's a behavior thing. We don't, the newer generation don't spend that much time in a pub. So it will change whether you want it or not. And now it's not all going to be sauna, wellness clubs all over the place. They're spending much more time at home. They have an urge also to actually connect, so they will go outside. So we need to think about, what does the pub of the future could look like? Is it just going to be like it is now? No, come on. We can be more creative. And of course it should be fun. And of course we should think about money, because alcohol brings in money. But let's also be creative a little bit. And that's why I was poking and talking to a lot of health brands to say, guys, if Heineken or Guinness owned the infrastructure of the bars, why couldn't that be in the hands of IM8 or other big brands who are trying to be this healthy way? Since we all want to go offline. So it's super interesting. And for me, it's a recruiting strategy because it attracts people that are curious enough to think about. So I have a lot of architects, designers, guest experience architects, investors, entrepreneurs who reach out to me to say, I totally understand it. This is not 100% true, but we're onto something. Let's work together. And that's what I want. I mean, I'm not recruiting people on normal job roles because that world doesn't exist anymore, because we have a gap between youngsters and companies who both don't know what they want. The youngsters are not good enough to articulate their vision. The companies are literally still understanding what AI has to offer before they're actually going to even hire new job roles, not people, but job roles. So there's this very nice space where you could attract people that have no clue that we're looking for them with skills that they're not aware that they have. And that's exactly the spot that we're looking for, to find that designer who understands analytics and has a passion for marketing that we could actually use to create that pub or lobby of the future. And all the lessons we get out for a pub is something we use in the communal spaces of our apartments. Because that's where we're facing that same particular new generation group that we would like to give the same feeling that we had with a pub back in the days, if you still follow me.
Of course. And if ever needing a testing ground, I mean, I think Ireland is a good place to start, and I'll happily point you in the right direction. But it's fascinating. And of course, what you said there in terms of the bigger beer brands owning a lot of the alcohol infrastructure of the world, probably. And yet, why couldn't a wellness brand, a health brand, a gym brand? I mean, I guess any large brand could own the infrastructure of a pub. But obviously they might think, well, why would we do that? It's like, well, because it's not a pub. It's just a building. It's a social hub. And pubs sell alcohol, but now they sell alcohol and food. And they might not even have to sell either. They can be, some pubs are obviously more entertainment led. Some are very large, so they end up more meeting spaces. Pubs can be very, very different things. I did work in a large pub in India. I lived in India for a year, a long time ago. And there was a huge pub in town that I loved. A lot of greenery, everywhere in India. A lot of they use plants very well. So this pub was filled with plants. In the morning, it opened at 7 a.m. and it didn't sell alcohol till around 2 p.m. And it was quite expensive to sort of pay in, and it was a co-working space. So I worked in the pub, but I got the money back in credit behind the bar. So I paid for the day, but then I used it for food.
Yeah.
And then I just got my food back or coffee. And then if I lent into the evening after 2, 3 p.m., I was obviously allowed to drink alcohol and go with the day. So I usually went down there on Friday, and on Friday, the place was packed. 7 a.m., there was like 100 people in there working at laptops because the pub is closed. It was just an office space. And we're all sitting in a very interesting, vibey space. The Friday feeling is there. Very relaxed atmosphere. And 2, 3 p.m., waiters came around, fancy a beer? And you were like, absolutely. I've had a great day.
Well, that's a great example.
I'll have my dinner and my beer. It was like such an easy way to connect with people.
And that's a great example. And all you need is a couple of brave developers, a good brand that actually leans towards experiments like that, and just try it out like we build digital products, right? Let's try it out. Let's try out the experiences, put the experience first, and let's see if you hit upon some relevant elements.
Fantastic. I'm just going to leave almost with a statement, in the sense that I almost want to put it on paper, where it's funny how I've also seen the data that the Gen Z, the generation underneath us, don't drink as much. And yet I don't believe it in the way that it's being presented. I almost feel that they're not drinking because of stress. I'd nearly question the idea that they're not drinking as much because of health. I do believe that they are more health conscious, but I also believe the disconnection and the social awkwardness there, the social media, that world of not feeling comfortable going out and not wanting to go out, and then alcohol not helping and alcohol being very expensive. I think there's something else there, and I wish.
Yeah, I think this device makes sure that they know that public awkwardness or public shame is more horrible or more is worse than having it's not worth it, right? So there are multiple things. There are 5, 6 main triggers why they think differently about those certain things. It's interesting.
It is. Jeroen, if someone wants to find out more about what you do in your work, just point them in the right direction.
LinkedIn is the perfect spot. And let me know what you think about the new pub. No, just find me on LinkedIn. I think that's a great starting point.
Well, thank you so much for chatting. That was fantastic.
Thank you. We'll be in touch. All right. Have a good day.